Well, many of your colleagues have routinely failed to mention one of the most important ones. I would say the most important one, which is demographic security for the white British people. We're going to become a minority in this country within the next 40 years on present demographic trends. In 2024, only 54% of live births were to white British mothers. This is an existential threat to our nation, and Reform
Why?
have always denied this.
Why?
Because...
Why? No. Let me give you a bit more detail around why I'm saying why. I think an awful lot of people in this country, and actually of all skin colours, share a concern about the major demographic changes in this country in terms of people coming from other countries, not speaking our language, not sharing our values of adherence to the law, and integrating, etc., etc. However, I don't think that's got anything to do with anyone's skin colour. So why is that a threat to our country?
White British is a census classification used by the
ONS. I'm not disputing that.
Yes, so I'm not talking about skin colour, I'm talking about a census classification that includes...
You are talking about
English,
skin colour.
Scottish,
White.
Welsh and
The word
Irish.
white. It's a bit of a clue there.
Yes, well, I mean, it's a descriptive category used
There
by
is
the
an
ONS
ethnicity that is, English, white, British, white. Yes, I get that. And, going back many centuries, we are and have been always, until about 20 years ago, almost entirely a white nation. I get that. Why is there being fewer births to white British as opposed to, say, black British or brown British people? Why is that a threat to our country?
Well, I think you've just answered that yourself, Julia, and that is that this is a very recent change in our nation's demographics, and an unwelcome change. It is a change that nobody ever voted for. In fact, since modern mass immigration began with the passing of the British Nationality Act in 1948, the British public have routinely voted against mass immigration, particularly from the Third World and former colonies.
But you're talking about immigration.
That's because these are people that are coming from vastly different cultures, vastly different parts of the world, with whom we have very little shared history,
and many others,
and therefore,
Charlie, I and many others share those concerns, but you are conflating immigration and white. Yes, I realise that ethnically British people have been white, so they have been. However, there are an awful lot of people who we will live and work alongside, and children go to school alongside, who are not just British, as in they've got a British passport. Their parents were born here. They were born here. They know no other country. They consider themselves completely British. They are British. My grandparents on one side came from Ireland. I consider myself, my father was born here, my mother was born here, I was born here. I consider myself British. People with exactly the same credentials, but maybe their family came from the Caribbean or came from India, but they have lived here 2 or 3 generations. They shared language, values, beliefs, integrated, assimilated generations ago. Why is they having babies? Why is that a threat to this country?
So, Julia, you are here acting as a mouthpiece for the regime that currently governs this country.
Do shut up, Charlie. You're embarrassing yourself.
What you're saying is exactly the same thing I've been hearing for my entire life, from primary school to secondary school to university, about what it means to be British, and that is that it is about shared values. This project
Why do you keep mentioning skin colour then?
As I've already said, and as you have acknowledged, white British is a census category used by the government to describe the English, Scottish, Welsh and Northern Irish. In other words, the native peoples of the British Isles.
Native, yes, I accept the word, I accept that, but why? But just, you know perfectly well, and with all due respect, I don't think you're as clever as you think you are, that you are constantly conflating the issue of immigration. I've just said to you, there is an issue with immigration and people who are not integrated, but I don't see what that's got to do with skin colour.
What's your definition of integration, Julia?
People, I think I've already said it 2 or 3 times, but people who speak English fluently, who are completely sharing values, belief in the law, equality under the law for women, gay people, I would suggest would be a key value now for the vast majority of Brits. You can marry who you want, you can worship who you want, you don't shut down to it. I would consider queuing, being nice, fairness. I would consider a lot of those to be British values and being integrated.
So if all of the white British people currently in Britain were replaced by Pakistanis and Somalians, all of whom believed in queuing, would Britain be the same as it is now, or would it be different?
This is
the key question, Julia.
No, it's not the key question. You're making a glib point. You're the one who keeps saying it's about immigration, and then you keep talking about skin colour.
Because, Julia, the question is, are we a people or aren't we? And if we are, then the changing demographics do have a material effect on the future of the country.
Changing demographics do.
I don't want my children to grow up in some effing Lebanon, which is the situation we are rapidly hurtling towards with the massive demographic change that we're experiencing in this country. So, if we are to restore Britain and turn it into a country that is worth living in for young people and old people, and all British people, then restoring Britain's demographic security and recognising that the changing demographics is at the root of so much of what is wrong with our country today is absolutely essential. And as you have just demonstrated, yourself, others in the mainstream media, and indeed many of those in Reform of the Conservative Party are not prepared to have this conversation because
I'm perfectly prepared to. I'm not trying to shut down the conversation. I just thought I was going to have a conversation with you about restore and reform. We come back on again another time when we've got more time, when we will debate that in more detail. When we have got more time, we'll make sure we've got it.